This video is going to cover question 1 to question 5. It's for the A451 2016 exam paper. I'll go through the answers and add some commentary to each question just to give you some ideas and to help you do your CTGs. Question 1 is the character E is part of a computer's character set. Describe what is meant by a character set. It's 1 mark, so you're just describing. You don't have to explain. So we could say a character set is a set of characters or symbols that a computer can understand or use or display. So it doesn't matter which one you use, you will still get 1 mark. So if you say it's a character set is a set of characters that a computer can use, that's 1 mark. If you use the word display, that's 1 mark. Whichever one you use, it's fine. If you say characters for programming, you won't get any marks. You need to explain that it is a set and not one individual character such as E. And the computer has to do something with it. So it has to display it, use it, or understand it. And if you talk about it being stored in binary or reference to ASCII, again, you won't get any marks. You have to be clear. And if you're talking about ASCII, you have to explain that. And it's not about how many characters there are. Question 2, straightforward question. It's 2 marks. It's converting from hexadecimal to binary. So we've got the number 4, which is here, and then the letter A, and we have to represent this in binary. So we know that 4 binary or 4 bits make 1 hexadecimal characters. So we start off with a symbol step. We put 8421 above each hexadecimal number, and then we try to make that number. So for example, I've got 2 numbers that I need to convert, 4 and A. I put 8421 above 4, so I tried to make 4 using 8421. So that's going to be 0100. Why? Because the 1 is under the 4's column, so 4 is represented using 0100 in binary. The letter A is 10, so I have to make 10 using 8421. So I need 18, and I should have had a 1 here, so I've made a mistake. So it should be 1010. So it should be 1 under the 8's column, a 0 under the 4's column, a 1 under the 2's column, and then a 0 here. So we know that hex is 0 to 9, and then the letter A is representing 10 and F is representing 15. Explain why mobile phones that can send emoji would use Unicode instead of ASCII as their character set. Well, ASCII is really old. It's the character set that is used to represent text in computers. Okay, so it was originally based on the English alphabet, A to Z, and it represents numbers and also characters that you see on your keyboard. So if you look at your keyboard, you have an @ sign, you have a dot, an underscore, a question mark, a $sign. So these are the characters that it can represent. Now the only problem with using ASCII for a phone is that ASCII is limited to 7 or 8 bits. Which means that the most characters you can have is 127 characters. So we can't represent all of the emojis, we can't represent other languages, other characters, and so on. So 1 mark would be to say this statement here. Another mark we can get is by saying that Unicode uses 16 or 32 bits to represent characters. So it has a bigger capacity and it can support more characters, so it can store emojis. Question 2. Lauren is a computing teacher. I made a slight mistake in the questioning. She's building a website for her computing class where they can share ideas. send each other programs, and discuss computing concepts. The students will have individual accounts they can log into, discuss the ethical and legal issues Lauren will have to consider when setting up the website. Now, what I usually would do is, if I'm answering this question, I will try to come up with some ideas or some things to help me answer the question. So she's building a website, well, that's accessible online, so it's accessible to everyone. It's for her class, so they're under 18. Students have individual accounts, so they can log in. They're sharing ideas, so if they're sharing ideas, they must be communicating with each other. And they're sharing programs. So we need to think about the legal and ethical issues. So legal is something that is permitted by law, and ethical is something that is right or wrong, but it's not illegal. So to get 1 mark, we start off with the legal side. We talk about copyrighted programs. So Lauren needs to make sure that his students are not sharing copyrighted programs, because that is illegal. So things like Microsoft Word, any other software that is paid for, you cannot be sharing. You need to have a license for it. Lauren needs to comply with the Data Protection Act. If she's going to be storing personal information about her students, she needs permission from their parents to use their data, and she has to use it for a specific purpose. Another mark we can get is that she needs to secure the system. So the website needs to be secure, so it stops hackers and viruses getting into the system and affecting all the other users. And finally, she needs to restrict access using passwords or permission. So that way, there's certain things they cannot access, and other people cannot access as well. So outsiders. So the ethical issues, plagiarism is one. So students may copy each other's work. If they're communicating with each other, there's a chance of cyberbullying. So they could be messaging each other, and they could be a student could be getting bullied online. And other marks we can get, so we can get any marks within here if we list things like e-safety. So students need to have an awareness of e-safety and how to use websites online. There needs to be some form of an acceptable use policy, so how the website is used. Just like when you log into a computer system at school, you have a policy that's in front of you that tells you the things you can and you cannot do. Lauren needs to consider that. And also inappropriate messages being sent. So this could be messages between student and teacher. It could also be messages between the students. So this is something Lauren has to consider, and it's an ethical thing to consider. And finally, backing up work. I mean, it's not illegal if Lauren doesn't back up their work, but again, it covers ethical to ensure their work is safe and it's not lost. Question 3 is asking us, explain why film ID has been included in the rating table. So in front of us we have a rating table. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I can count. So that's 4 fields we've got. We've got the rating ID, the film ID, the user ID, and the rating. So it says, explain why film ID has been included in the rating table. Well, it's been included because it's a primary key in the film table. That will give you 1 mark. A primary key can be used to link 2 different tables together. When a primary key appears in another table, it's known as a foreign key. So here, it's a foreign key. So you would get 1 mark for saying this and 1 mark for saying this bit here. And you also need this foreign key so we know what film it's been rated. So Elliot here has rated this particular film. Jade has rated this particular film. Sunil has rated this particular film. And then finally, it reduces data redundancy as it's not repeated. So if Sunil rates this particular film, he's not going to be rating that film again in most cases. So you usually rate one particular film in most cases. You don't rate the same film twice. Question 3b, 2 marks. Explain why it's a good idea to separate data or the data from the application that uses the database. Okay, so if we think about doing this, why would it be a good idea? Well, if it's a good idea because we can then have different applications or different brands accessing it. So if we think about Instagram, you can access your data, your profiles, your profile, your pictures, your messages and stuff on any phone. You can access it on an Android system or an iOS system, and you can even access that on a web-based system because the data and application's been separated. You don't need a specific application to access it. We don't have to adapt the database structure. So because we've got the application and database separate, for Android we can keep the same data, we can have the same database, and for iOS we can have the database the same. The only thing we change is just the application and the interface. If we update the application, it doesn't affect the data. So wherever you see this little one, these are the statements you can say or write, and these are the number of marks you would get for each of those statements. So if we update the application, it won't affect the data. So for example, a little while ago, Instagram updated their logo. It had no effect on your profile, no effect on your pictures whatsoever. It was still there, it wasn't deleted. And data can be changed or updated. So if you update the data, it has no effect on the application. Question 3C. Give one example of a record that could be stored in the user table. Well, the user table has the following fields. It has a user ID, it has a first name, a surname, and date of birth. A record is a collection of fields joined together. So when we join all of these fields together, we have something called a record. So some of you put only one thing. Well, it's not a record then. So a record would be something like this: Joe 101, Joe Blogs. So his first name would be Joe, his last name would be Blogs, and his date of birth would be that particular. So if you include all of this, you would get 1 mark. If you include one thing, you'd get 0 marks because a field has multiple. A record has multiple fields. Question 3DI, 1 mark. Charlotte uses a query to list films. The query uses the following criteria. So a rating less than 2 and user ID equals Jade. List the rating IDs of the rating that will be selected from the extract shown. So it's telling us what rating ID will be shown based on the following criteria. So we've got 2 things, Jade and rating less than 2. So first of all, we need to find rating less than 2. That's not less than 2. That is less than 2. That is less than 2. This is not less than 2. So we've got these 2. And who is it by? And user ID Jade 101. So this one is Sunil. What about this one? That one is Jade. Okay, so the rating is 00215. There we go. That's your 1 mark. If you said anything else, it wouldn't be correct. If you said this one as well, 00216, well, that's not correct because we have an and user ID equals Jade 101. If it said rating less than 2, then you could put Sunil. But here it says it's looking for Jade. That's where a few of us made a mistake. Question 3DII. Write the criteria for a query that will select all films produced in the year 2015 in the category comedy. Easy marks, 3 easy marks. Where we went wrong was we didn't look at the information provided. First thing you have to do is look at the films table. The films table has film ID, it has title, it has year, director, and category. You've got to make sure that we have the correct spelling when we are writing our query. So we are looking for year, which is there, and so the year has to be 2015. We've got category, and the category has to be comedy. So don't have to write select from where. If you want, wonderful, but I don't think a lot of us are going to remember that. So we start off with an easy solution. We say year equals 2015. Year is a number and it's a date. We don't put quotes. We can put quotes, but we don't have to. So year equals 2015. And we want to know the category comedy. So we use an and we say category equals comedy. So comedy is spelled correctly, and because it's text, we have to use quotes. So 1 mark for saying year equals 2015, 1 mark for using and 1 mark for saying category equals comedy. Question 4a is state whether this algorithm uses selection, sequence, or iteration. It's using sequence because it's a set of code being run line by line. It would be selection if the code had some if statements, and it would be iteration if the code had some loops. A constant is a location in memory. The value or contents cannot be changed while the program is running. So you would use a constant for things that do not change. For example, VAT could be as a constant at 20%. Some of you said that it's a variable. It's not a variable. It's a location in memory, and the value and contents cannot be changed whilst the program is running. Once you stop the program, you can change those values and you can update them if you wish to do so. Question 4c, 1 mark, and as we can see, we've got the code here. There's no if statements, there's no loops, so it's a sequence. We've got to look at this and we've got to try to come up with the answer or the correct one. So we've got number of words, we've inputted the number of chapters, so we want to find out how many pages we have. So to find out how many pages we have, we need to find out how many words we have. We divide that by number of pages and then we add it to number of chapters. So line 5 is incorrect. So line 5 should be number of pages equals number of pages, which is this calculation, plus number of chapters, like so. Because we are updating that variable, so we say number of pages equals number of pages, because it's got this calculation here already done on line 4, and then number of chapters. Question 4D and E. Identify the most appropriate data type for the following variable, number of words. Give a reason for your choice. Well, number of words, it's going to be a whole number. It's going to be an integer. So the data type for this is going to be an integer. Why? Well, we can't have half a word and it's a whole number. So 2 easy marks there. 4E is Joseph is changing his algorithm and needs to store the name and price of his book in new variables. State the most appropriate data type for these. Well, name is going to be string because it's going to be text, and price is going to have decimal numbers, so it's got to be real or float or double or currency. Any of those will give you a mark. Can you see how easy it is? 4 easy marks if you know the correct data type that are used. Question 4F. Tool 1 we can use is an error diagnostic. Think about it. You use PyScripter. When you type in something into PyScripter, if you type it incorrectly, if you type print incorrectly and run it, it will produce you an error. So an IDE provides you with error diagnostic. So 1 mark for saying it provides you with error diagnostic, and another mark for saying that it will basically highlight where the error is. The screen goes red and then the line that's incorrect is highlighted. It tells you which line number it is as well. And in some cases, it actually suggests what you should do to correct that error or what you should do to change it, so you're fixing that error. The second tool we can use is a text editor. So within PyScripter, we can edit our code. We can highlight our code, we can indent, we can comment. So for example, if you select all of your code, there's a little button you can press that moves it 4 spaces to the right, 4 spaces to the left. They are features of IDEs. Different IDEs have different features. So 4 marks, 1 for this, 1 mark for that, 1 mark for saying text editor, and 1 mark for saying indent. And then other things we could say, versioning tool, so we can see the different versions that the files have gone through. Question 4G, compiler. The role of a compiler is to convert to low level in one go. So a compiler is used if you want to create an exe or an executable file. So if you've made a program and you want to give that program to someone, you compile it and you say, here you go, there's the program. If you do that, they cannot access the source code. All they can access is the program. It's a bit like opening Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word has been compiled. You don't know how it's been created or what the source code is. All you can do is use it. So we could have got quite a few marks on here. Wherever you see the 1, that's where we could have got a mark. And so it prevents people from seeing the code, and it's easy to distribute. An interpreter is different. What an interpreter does is it does it line by line. So it converts to low level line by line. If there is an error within your code, it stops at that line and says, look, line 20 is wrong. You've made a mistake here. So it shows the location and the line as well. And it's also a bit faster than a compiler. But the only thing with an interpreter is obviously the code hasn't been compiled, so people can see the source code.